Welcome to the RAMZPAUL show. It is Monday, April 7th. And no, the apocalypse didn't happen. It never happens. Nothing ever happens. Everyone's like, oh no, today the market's going to crash. Everyone's going to die. And, all that type of stuff. And the market, as I just checked right before I came on, it was down 1.5%, which isn't until it's 5%, it really doesn't mean much. So I think the stock market is starting to level out a little bit, and we're not going to get a huge crash. I mean, we're getting an adjustment. This tariffs, as I discussed at length Friday evening, is a major change to America, our economic system, since really Clinton and NAFTA. And while it is sort of like if you have a credit card, but you don't really have the money, you can run up a lot of debt. And it seems like you're living well, but you really have a lot of debt. And the day of reckoning is coming. Well, we could see that in America. The day of reckoning was coming by us outsourcing all our jobs to foreign countries because it made for cheaper items. And we got a lot of money flowing back in as we did this. And so the stock market really for the past since Clinton has been really good. And we've seen pretty huge, especially asset inflation in the house of homes and stocks. While on some levels, it depends who you are, that could be good. If you, let's say you're older boomer, and I don't like generational politics, but if you're an older boomer and you already had your home paid off, well, this is a great deal because you feel rich and your stocks are going up. But it wasn't so good for the people coming into the workplace, younger people. They no longer can afford a house, whereas years ago, and I know money was different back then because of inflation, but even if you adjust that, an average working guy, even if he didn't go to college, let's say just went out, got a job at the factory, he can make enough money to have a nice home in the suburbs, nothing fancy, maybe a one-car garage back then, a ranch house, and have a decent life. And that's what my grandparents did. They were raised real poor in southern Indiana. Then it was in the 20s or 30s. My grandfather went up to Chicago, or maybe it's later in the 40s. They went up to Chicago, and he worked in a plant and made decent money. Not rich, but they made decent money. They were very conservative in how they spent their money and saved it. They would never invest in stocks because they lived through the Great Depression. So they were always very skeptical of stocks. I think they kept their money in CDs. And back then, interest paid more on CDs. So that was the kind of the way it worked. But in the last, I would say 30, 35, 40 years, we've had this so-called free trade. And it's not, I say so-called because other countries haven't really done free trade with us. They've had their tariffs. So all these countries complaining about tariffs, they're a little hypocritical because they use tariffs to protect their industry, whether it be the dairy industry in France or to protect rice production in Japan, very heavy tariffs. And I think what happened when Trump got in, his team saw that, this was no longer sustainable. We were in debt, which, like credit card debt, you can do for a while, but eventually it catches up to you. And that it caught up to us now. We pay more in interest on our debt than we do for national defense. And we have a huge national defense budget. So we've had to have some pretty painful restructuring. But I agree with Trump. If we can get through this pain and without people freaking out and try to roll it back, I think it could be better for America, where we start to bring industry back here in America. And I know it's getting complicated because of AI and robotics. Would you still have the day of like all these men with steel hats and lunch boxes going to the factory when now it's mostly robots? That's a problem no matter what. And I think the government at all in society is going to have to wrestle with that equation. What do you do when you don't need people to work? Because our whole model mostly through human history, is you sell your labor somehow. So either you go to the factory and you do a repetitive task all the time and they pay you in exchange for your labor, or you get an engineering degree and you design things and they pay you in exchange for your labor. But if people are no longer needed, what are we going to do? And so that's coming into play too. So there's a lot of things coming into play, but I think the Trump administration realizes if we didn't do anything, we would have an uncontrolled collapse, and that would not be pretty. I mean, it's hard now with the stock market, but it would have been 10 times worse. So they've been attacking this at various angles. The first angle we saw with immigration. We can't keep pouring all these endless people into our country. Remember, under Joe Biden, it'd be like 10,000 of hordes just pouring in. They were like a zombie invasion. And these people weren't adding to the economy for the most part. They've done studies they were taking out of the economy. Europe's seeing the same thing too. So these people poured in and immediately they got on Social Security. They started to take all these benefits, welfare benefits, housing, food, free medical benefits that you and I don't get as Americans, but they got. Well, how was that being paid for? Well, by us. So that had an end. So illegal immigration, Trump was able to end. We don't have illegal immigration anymore. And that's amazing. It really is amazing. And I have a lot of criticisms of Trump because I'm not being paid by anyone. I'm just, you guys support me and I appreciate that. So I can say what I want, whatever I like. I don't have to Trump cheerlead. And there's a lot of things he does I don't really care for. But we got to give him credit for ending illegal immigration. That was a huge thing. Now to get the illegals out of the country, that's a little bit more difficult. I know it seems easy for us. Oh, just round them up and send them out. Well, you get all these federal district judges that hate him. It's just a little complicated with that. I'm not making excuses for Trump, but this is reality. So that's a harder nut to crack than stopping illegal immigration. Stopping illegal immigration was fairly easy. And so that's good. So that helps a drain on our treasury. And then the other part was the whole Doge with Elon Musk. And I know Elon Musk has got a lot of crap for that. And especially a lot of people that are federal workers. I know some watch my show, and there's a lot of great federal workers. Don't get me wrong. But the government was bloated in size. It had to be cut. And there was a lot of waste and fraud that went on that Doge has uncovered. And there's just a lot of people that honestly don't add much value, and we can't afford them all in the federal government. The entire economy recently seems to have been just the government growth, and that's not sustainable because the government, by definition, is more of like a parasite. You could say it's needed and we need some government, but it doesn't really add to our economy like a new factory does or a service. And so everything's been really skewed there. The government workers have had it very easy over the past 10 years, not having to worry about layoffs, getting good pay, great benefits, and less accountability. That's changing now. So that had to be done. And of course, there's a lot of hate for that, but we just can't spend as much. The other big thing of spending that Trump is trying to attack, and we'll see, he's had mixed results on this. It's our military industrial complex or our war machine. That's what the United States is about. My whole life, we've been about bombing some country. I mean, how many years has it been? It seems like every year we have bombed some country. It's really crazy. Ever since I was born in the 60s, we've been bombing someone. We're still doing that now, sadly, in Yemen. And that's very expensive. These aren't cheap missiles. And Trump said, we need to get out of all these wars. And the big one, obviously, in the past 4 years with the Biden administration is our proxy war with Russia. It's been extremely expensive. We just don't have the money to fight this type of war. And it's not in our interest. I mean, who cares if the eastern provinces in Ukraine are now part of Russia? I don't really care. The people there are mostly ethnic Russian. They voted that they wanted to be part of Russia. It's not our business, especially we don't have the money to piss away on this. So I don't really care. No, Russia's not going to take over the world. Sadly, I would like them to invade Britain and free the people there. Britain's like a dystopian nightmare now. But sadly, no, Russia's not going to attack Britain or France or any NATO country. That's fear porn that the European leaders are using to try to gin up a war with Russia, because they want to trick the United States getting into a war with Russia, because this is their globalist project, which is crashing down now because of these tariffs and stricter immigration. And we're seeing the rise of right-wing parties in Europe, but they're desperately trying to hold on to their vision. And one of their visions to get this worldwide globalism, where we'll all live in a pod and own nothing and eat bugs, was to help topple Russia and China. And well, that's not coming about now. Russia's a lot stronger than we thought. We put all these sanctions on Russia, and Russia didn't collapse. According to the economic models, Russia was a weak country. They had they just have an economy the size of Spain or some bullshit like that. Depends how you measure economy. But they didn't collapse because they actually make real things. They have factories, they have mineral production, they have a lot of farmland, and they just invested in themselves. So losing like Starbucks didn't cause Russia to collapse. But the neocons, they thought for sure putting all these sanctions on and kicking them out of the banking system would make Russia collapse. It didn't collapse. In fact, I'll show you stories as we go through today. Russia, even Europeans are now admitting Russia is stronger than it was before the war, which is an amazing admission, because these same liars have been telling you during the first part of the war. Remember, Russia lost 90% of their army. Okay, if Russia lost 90% of the army, how are they stronger now than they were before the war? In fact, their army's bigger now, and they have a lot more ammunition, missiles, the whole thing. It doesn't make sense. It's because they were lying to you, and they were running propaganda against you. And part of it was based on your tax dollars. You pay taxes. Part of it went to USAID. They paid organizations to be on Twitter, to post Ukrainian propaganda about how glorious victories they have, and how stupid the Russians are, how Putin is dying of cancer and will drop dead any minute, and how all the Russians are dying and they don't care about their people, and they don't even have rifles. They were fighting with shovels. That was the BBC, a true story. It was all lies. It was all lies. And we're seeing that now. It's like COVID. There's so many things that happen now. They're just based on propaganda or narrative. And that's not the case. So Russia is fine. And in fact, they did something that really scared us. They started revive or make stronger BRICS. That's an economic Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. But there's other countries now that are outside the Western influence. So Russia, they still trade a lot with China. They still trade with India. They still trade with Brazil and Mexico. There's not much we can do about it. So the sanctions failed on Russia, and they've even been talking about maybe one day having their own currency as they said not now, but that could threaten the dollar. So there was a lot of things that happened there. It's not good for America to be in this perpetual fight with Russia. And I think Trump is trying to end that. Part of the problem with Trump, though, the easy way to end this is just to wash our hands of this and say, hey, we tried, but we can't afford it. I wish Trump did that first, but Trump wanted to be seen as a peacemaker. And he's got an ego. He doesn't want to be seen as a guy that, lost the war in Ukraine. Because if we pull out and Russia gets the eastern provinces of Ukraine, the usual suspects will moan and kvetch that Trump lost the war. We were brilliantly winning this war until Trump got here, which wasn't true, but that's what they'll say. But who cares what they say? I mean, we can't. I wish Trump didn't care what they said and just did what's right. So hopefully we will get out of this mess, because again, financially, we just don't have the money for this. And the rumor is Trump is going to give Zelensky an ultimatum that he's got to, because Zelensky's a liar. He changes his mind every day. And I know all politicians are liars, but Zelensky's on a different level. This guy is he's like schizophrenic. You can't trust anything he says. He could change his opinion within the day. So I don't know why they deal with him. But supposedly Trump's going to give them an ultimatum like, yeah, you got to get a deal with Russia. If you don't, we're dropping all support. We're done messing around with you. And then that will be the end of not all of Ukraine, but Eastern Ukraine, because I don't think Russia really has a desire to take all of Ukraine. So that's coming up. And unfortunately, though, we are spending a lot of money on dumb stuff with Iran, with the Yemen. And that is wasting a lot of money because you really can't win wars just by bombing. I mean, it makes for cool graphics. And I guess there's a tribe in Yemen. They were all in a big circle. They said this is just their tribal get together where they do prayers and it's a community. Trump said, "Oh, it's a terrorist meeting," which I hate to side for the Houthis or the people in Yemen. But I think if they were really having a terrorist meeting, to discuss tactics, they want to have some big circle outside. They would hide. I don't think they're that dumb. But anyway, we bombed this tribal meeting, butchered a bunch of people. Oh yeah, America, yeah, okay. But that doesn't really change anything. I mean, it just makes them hate us more. And the Houthis are still there to fight with us with their drones. So bombing doesn't really solve anything. Biden tried to bomb. It didn't work. We, under Trump, has bombed the Houthis. Yeah, he kills some people, but you don't eliminate it. The only way you can eliminate it is if you actually send troops in and invade. And we're not going to do that for a variety of reasons. And we could threaten to bomb Iran. But again, what's good is that going to do? If anything, it will hurt the economy a lot because of oil prices. And bombing Iran, again, it'd be like the Houthis. It costs a lot of money, but it's not going to stop Iran from doing whatever. And again, Iran doesn't have any desire to invade America or anything. The only reason we have bad relations with Iran is because Israel's our best little friend and they tell us what to do and they pay for our politicians. Let's just be honest. That's the way it is. So Trump has not been really good on that part. So we're trying to cut expenses. So that needs to happen in the government through Doge, through immigration, so we don't have to pay for all these illegals draining our system, and somewhat in the military. And Trump, from what I read, they're still planning to cut the military, which is good. Usually Republicans always increase the size of the military. I think our military could be more effective if it was even smaller, better trained, more high tech, get rid of the diversity that's incompetent, or the men that wear dresses, they need to be out of the military. And you could have a pretty good military to defend America. So hopefully Trump will do that. So we're cutting expenses, defending the border, and these were all about globalism. And then the third one was tariffs to try to bring American manufacturing back here into the United States. And again, there's a lot of implications for this. And it will mean you don't have all this cheap labor in Vietnam making your tennis shoes that have to be built here in America. And this should help Americans. And it's a security thing too. You can't deindustrialize and fight wars unless you're an idiot. And Britain, I guess, is really going down the drain fast. And Starmer, they shut down their last steel plant. They invented the whole industry and they don't have any now. And they're trying to act tough around Russia. It's like, what are you going to do? You're just a weak little island that has given up your industry. All England is now is trying to import third worlders. And when those third worlders should attack English children, if English parents should complain about it, the English government will throw you in prison. Not the ones that do the attack and the ones that complain about it. This is their model. It's just crazy. In fact, they just came out recently, Starmer did that, we might have to have a draft or conscription. Could you imagine that, actually drafting? But we're not going to draft Muslims because we don't want our poor, precious Muslims to face battle against the Russians. So it's like this two-tier system. It's like they put in with sentencing. If you're a white guy and do the same crime as a black guy in Britain, you as a white guy get a longer sentence. It's crazy. So, and they probably don't trust the Muslims to be in their units too. They could freak out and kill the British. So this is just a disaster. So Trump has put on tariffs to try to bring that all back. This is a necessary thing that has to happen. And I think I do agree with Trump. I think long term, this will be good for America. It's a restructuring again that had to happen. And I think eventually the Dow, I don't really care so much about the Dow or stocks. I mean, pretty much the stock market has been for the very wealthy people, but the vast majority of Americans that don't have stocks, they've been priced out of homes. Everything's been very expensive. So it doesn't really matter to most Americans. And the rich people, they didn't really give a shit when jobs were being sent overseas to India. They didn't care about that. They didn't care about, factory workers being displaced. They didn't care about that. They had all their stocks and stuff. So if they didn't care about normal people, I don't know why we should shed any tears about these people. But however, saying that, I don't think the stocks are going to go down forever. Already today, I just looked right now, is down 2% today. And 2% dip is that's not super huge. I mean, when you get like 20%, that's like huge. 2% is within the norms. So we're already seeing kind of a flattening. So initially the tariffs were announced, it was a dramatic drop. And then it started today with a dramatic drop. And then it actually came back up to green. And then it dipped a little bit. So this is it. Let's see here. I got a power chat from Deep Betrayed. Is globalism dead economically and militarily? I would hope so. I'd hope the answer is yes. I know Trump wants to kill globalism. And globalism depends how you define globalism. There's throughout human history, countries have traded with each other, and that's fine. And people visit other people's countries. But the reason we have empires and countries and different lands is because people are different. They have different cultures, different languages, different religions, and we're not the same. And globalism was a desire to basically a John Lennon song, imagine, let's eliminate all countries, no religion, and we all have gay sex and live in our little pods. That was like the globalist ideal. And that's starting to fall apart. It was never going to work because it goes against human nature. It was globalism was kind of a variant of communism. And communism, as much as they try to make work, couldn't work because it goes against human nature. In human nature, people want to benefit themselves and their families before strangers. And communism is supposed to be you work for the benefit of others for the good of mankind. People don't give a shit about that. So they get lazy, they don't innovate, and the whole society gets poor. And globalism didn't work in the same manner because people, in general, except maybe white people, sadly, but hopefully white people are waking up, don't care about other groups of people. And we need to understand that. They look at themselves first. And I did my video today, and if you haven't, subscribe to my Substack. It's in the description below. I put out a video every day, and all my videos are always on Substack. And today's video is also on Rumble. I didn't put a video on YouTube because I had to go through some more racial stuff. But it's interesting, and there was a graph that really showed and measured racial opinions that people have of their race versus other races. So, and they broke it down by like white, black, Hispanic, and Asian. And Asian, I'm in America. When we say Asian, we don't mean Pakistani like in Britain. We mean like Japanese or Chinese or Vietnamese. So they just asked people, what do you think of your race, favorable or unfavorable? And so if you're white, they said, well, what do you think of blacks? Okay, what do you think of Hispanics? What do you think of Asians? Then they went up to blacks and they said, okay, you're black. What do you think of white people? What do you think of your fellow blacks? What do you think of Hispanics? What do you think of Asians? And it was really interesting. Every race except one rated most favorably their own race. So blacks, they 100% preferred dramatically their own people to other races. Hispanics, same way. Asians, same way. But white people, we didn't. White people is interesting. It's almost a straight line. The approval for other races versus their own race is almost the same. And it's funny because all the Hollywood propaganda, talks about the evils of white racism. But if you just look at the data, whites are least racist compared to all the other races, because all the other races, they really prefer their own, and they all hate whites. And there's a little bit of envy there too. So I think that's part of the problem. And it's not even racial. It's also then goes the ethnicity. Like the Japanese don't like Chinese, even though they're both Asian. And in Europe, traditionally, the Russians didn't like the Germans didn't like the French, and so forth. This is just human nature. So globalism tries to eliminate that, but it really doesn't work. It kind of worked. I think the elites thought it kind of worked for them, but they live a very artificial life that's propped up. Meaning, if you're an elite, you don't really consider yourself an American or a Brit or a Frenchman. You're a cosmopolitan, and you have your private jets that fly you to San Francisco, New York, Washington, London, Paris. I mean, this is what you do, right? And you go to your fancy cocktail parties, and they're very diverse, and you have diversity, but the diversity is very tame, and it's just fabulous. So as I always say, you'll go to a cocktail party. You're mostly around other white people or Jewish people, but then you go to a cocktail party, and then there'll be a fabulous like gay man in drag, and you'll just laugh and just be so excited about that. And you'll be saying, it just shows how open-minded you are about homosexuality and cross-dressing and blacks, and you just love it because you went to this party. And the guy was just so funny. And you're just so cool because you're really down for that. You're not like these stupid, ignorant bigots. No, you're educated, you're wealthy, you understand how things should run. So for this class, they were always globalist by nature anyway. And that's why, and I saw this when I was in the business, they never thought about, because I thought about this. I remember when I was in the business field, I was like, well, wait a minute, we're doing this policy that can save some money, but it's replacing American jobs. And this was in Tulsa at the time. And these are people that have families. They send their kids to college. They have mortgages. They're they're the backbone of this community. And you're trying to replace them with like Indians because it's cheaper, but you're destroying this community. And don't you care about these people? And mostly they don't, because really rich people or people that strive to be in that elite class, they don't care about that. They just care about their, I think Z-Man calls it the cloud people. They want to become, either they are a cloud person or they want to be one, and they look down upon the rest of humanity. So in that sector, they already have globalism, and it's working well for them because they're rich. They have private planes and multiple houses. They're like Hollywood movie stars, directors, those types, people like Goldman Sachs. They go to Aspen for the retreats. It's great for them, right? It's great for them, but they're not like the white family that has to try to scrape up expensive rent and trying to make things to work. And meanwhile, you have diverse neighbors that are screaming in the parking lot and knifing each other. And when you go out to your car, they say, hold up, and they're trying to scam you out of money. They don't have to live that way. They don't face that. They never see that. And so globalism for the average person is a disaster. For a rich person, it's kind of a fad because that's the way they live. So I don't think this is it. I got a super chat from James. Trump is the AIPAC stooge who serves Israel. Trump has always been a big fan of Jews and Zionism, and that's always been the case. He's never hid that. So if that's your one issue, then I don't know what you do, because pretty much every politician in America is a fundamental problem we have in our country that we got to reform, I think, in finances, and we got to break apart the media. And is a couple of reasons. The reason AIPAC has so much power is because they fund a lot of politicians, and then with their co-ethnicists in the media, it's one of those things. They're like, okay, RAMZPAUL, you want to run for office? Well, you better support money to Israel. Otherwise, we're not going to give you funding. We're going to fund your competitor. And by the way, we're going to go to the media, and some of these guys, we go to the same temple as them, and we're going to tell them to call you an anti-Semite, start running stories on you, and they'll start screaming about hate and everything else. And politicians are fearful of that. And so that's part of it. So Trump and Israel, you could, I'm not a mind reader. Does Trump act that way towards Israel because he really believes that in his heart? Or is he more cynical that he understands they have a lot of power, so he needs to pacify them? I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I think part of it's a little bit of everything. I think a lot of it, a lot of older boomers, and I'm not attacking boomers per se, but statistically, when we do surveys, boomers are much more supportive of Israel than younger people. Even in the Republican Party and white people, young whites aren't really supportive of Israel in that whole group, but older boomers still are. They still into the whole the Jews are God's chosen people, unfairly persecuted for no reason. The 6 million, and we got to support them because God supports them. That whole nonsense they believe, and they believe it very much. And younger people less so. So I think part of it, Trump really believes that, a lot of that. I'm not saying he's totally a Schofield Bible. Think we got to bless Israel so they can rebuild the temple and the rapture will happen. I don't think he necessarily believes that, but he's kind of in that segment. So that's how it is. And I agree with you on that, but good luck getting anyone else in there. It's just probably not going to happen. And that's always a trade-off you have to make in politics, or a compromise. There's never a perfect candidate, but with Trump, I mean, Kamala was married to a Jewish guy. I mean, they were in bed with Israel. She was literally in bed with him. So that wasn't going to change. It was just with Trump, we would stop the illegal immigration and other positives. And he attacked this whole DEI, racism against white people. So, yeah, I'm not a real. And again, I don't hate Israel or anything. My position is we should treat Israel like we treat Iceland or Paraguay, right? How often do politicians talk about Paraguay? We got to stand with the Paraguay people. Yeah, you just never hear that. But anyway, Rowhouse, did Elon Musk and Rams trade places? Rams must agree with this. Thank you, Rowhouse. Let's just take a look here. And Elon Musk.
Yes. The mass immigration is insane and will lead to the destruction of any country that allows unfettered mass immigration.
Yeah, it will, because of reasons we talked about. And I'm not even, there's economic problems with that. I've talked about how they suck dry countries because their countries are shitty, not because what we've done to them. That's kind of their nature, and they don't change when they come here. But that's not even my argument economically, even if they should help us economically, which they don't. They don't. Canada's brought in supposedly all these smart Indians, and their economy is going down the toilet. Is being able to have a homeland. I want to live around people that are like me, that have my values, that have my customs. And I like where I live in an area that is pretty much all white and Christian, and I can walk on country roads. And a lot of times people stop, hey, you need a ride? They're just friendly, right? They're not going to try to rob me or shake me down like if I was in a diverse area. I like that. I don't want to live around these other people. I just don't. And I don't know why I should be forced to, or anyone should be forced to. And I'm kind of like Jared Taylor this way. If you want to live around diversity because you think it's so enriching, I think it's kind of crazy, but I'm not going to stop you, right? If you want to do that, well, whatever. Have fun. Just don't come bitching to me when things go south, right? But they always do. But that's not what it is. It's always they want to force this on us. And they want to force it on everyone. The reason is it's sort of like with COVID, really, because I always said that the whole COVID thing, when they're trying to mandate vaccines with everyone, I always said that would end. The only way they can make that work is try to force it in every state. And you remember that Biden tried to force it in every state that if you didn't get the COVID vaccine, you would lose your job. A lot of people forget that. I remember that. And that went to the Supreme Court because some states, like my state, Arkansas, said, no, we're not going to force people to get a vaccine or to work. And because Biden said, well, I'm not going to force you. You can just die and starve. Fuck those people. Fuck those people. They need to be on trial. But anyway, we should do the same to him. But anyway, so it went up to the Supreme Court and they struck it down. And immediately the whole COVID thing ended because Biden knew unless you can force it in every state, what would have happened is states like New York, California, shitlib states would have forced it because they were all into that hoax. But in southern states like Texas or Arkansas, they wouldn't force the vaccine. And then you'd see that the people in Texas and Arkansas are just as healthy or even healthier than the states that mandate the vaccine. And then that's hard to explain. So they had to force it on everyone. Communism did the same thing. They had to try to force it on everyone. And that's why they had to build a wall, because people say, this doesn't work. I'm going to go over to a free country with capitalism. It's a better standard of living. And they're like, no, you can't do that. And the same with diversity. If diversity was really a wonderful thing, they wouldn't have to enforce it by gunpoint. People would just naturally, I want to live in a diverse area. Damn it, I want to move and live in a diverse area because it's enriched and man, they're funky and oh, it's vibrant. Oh, it's unlike the pale and stale white neighborhoods. Oh, I want to live there till they get stabbed. And so, but they would want to go in those areas, right? But they don't. They always want to go in white areas. So with diversity, if you allow freedom of choice or freedom of association, the whole thing falls apart because no matter what people say, they don't live that way. So you could be a shit lib that is all about George Floyd, who cries about that. And we need more representation in movies of minorities. And meanwhile, you're rich and you live in your all white gated neighborhood. Many such cases. I say, hell with those people, put them in diversity, right? But if you allow people to be free, they're always going to avoid it. And that's the problem with immigration here. If you just open it, these people, they claim they hate white people, hate white supremacy, yet they come to our country because they lack the ability to create the standard of living. Genetically, they can't do it. So they want us to provide it for them. Then they feel a lot of envy and hatred towards us because they can't do it. And that results in a lot of crime. It's just not worth it.
That country will simply cease to exist. At the end of the day, it is a numbers game, a numbers situation. If there are 8 billion people in the world, and let's say you're a country of, 50 million, 60 million, or for a medium-sized country, but even for a country like the United States, which is 350 million, given that there are 8 billion people in the world, it only takes a few percent of the rest of the world to move to the country to where it is no longer that country.
Right. And we're seeing this just because they come in. This is the great tragedy. So they come in not because they love our Constitution, our right to bear arms, First Amendment, or civilization. In fact, they're very envious of us and they hate us because their people can't create it. And so they have to come up with weird justifications in their mind that the white man in the past stole it all from them and they just forgot it. So they have a lot of anger, but they come here because they want this stuff. But then when they come here, they start electing their people that implement policies that led to their countries being shitholes, right? So this is what you see, and we've seen this on a microcosm in cities, right? Detroit was a very prosperous city in the 1920s. It was considered the Paris of the United States, beautiful. And then all of a sudden diversity moved in and things went to shit. And this happened, it went to shit before free trade and the automotive industry, started to offshore their factories. This started long before this. This started in the 50s and 60s. Diversity started and white people started to flee Detroit. And they didn't flee Detroit to the suburbs because they hate skin color. They didn't like the behavior, the crime, the loudness, the aggressiveness. And now Detroit is a disaster area. And so this is what happens to city. Same thing happens, something small to school. We'll go through the same things too. So I did a video a long time ago about this, so you have the same mostly white school that really does well, safe, good scores. And then liberals will say, this isn't fair. The black schools are just like jungles, there's murders, there's crime, and the scores are real low. Somehow white people are hogging all the good stuff and they're keeping it from black people. So what we can do to fix it, we'll just move blacks into the white school. And then that way they can partake in all the benefits that these white people magically get. And they do think in many ways it's magic. Whites have this magic juju that they're not sharing with blacks. So the blacks come in, and then all of a sudden violence starts to creep up. You start to see lower scores, and then you start to see some whites trickle out. More blacks come in, more whites leave, and then pretty soon that school is as bad as the inner city black school, because the location doesn't matter, the teachers don't matter, it's the people. And the same thing on a macrocosm will happen to a country. And this is a great tragedy. Like Britain was great because it's full of Scottish English people. I mean, they're not perfect. They're different than Americans, but that's why they were great. If you replace those people from Bangladesh or Pakistan, well, guess what? Britain will start to look like Bangladesh or Pakistan. It's not, the left always thought magically if you take someone from Pakistan and put them in Britain, they would just become British and have the same values. It doesn't work that way. Just like if you take a kid from an inner city school and put him in the suburbs, he's going to magically change into a white kid. It doesn't work that way. People are genetic beings, so we have genes, and our environment can change some on the margins, but we still have a nature. Just like dogs, a greyhound has a different nature than a pit bull. They're bred for different things. And yeah, based on socialization and training, you can shape their behavior somewhat. I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but you have a fundamental nature, and so do people. And countries were originally formed, or areas, so people that have the same values can, what we call, have self-determination. So it's not a hatred of other people. So the English people, they have a nice country. Bangladesh is shitty. The answer is for people in Bangladesh to fix their country if they can. And if they can't, well, sorry, that's the way God designed a revolution. But it's suicidal by ruining Britain. You're not fixing Bangladesh, you're just ruining Britain. And so this is the problem, and the problem we have here in the United States. So Elon Musk is 100% right on this.
A country is not its geography. A country is its people.
Not really. And I wish I could explain this better to people. I always explain this. I learned this in the 90s. The way that nation is different than a country. A nation is the people that are related by blood, birth. It comes from the Latin word natio, which you see like neonatal. You remember that? Neonatal? Natal has the same derivative as the word nation. Natal means newly born kids in the hospital. Well, that is the same thing as nation, so by birth. So like you don't join the Cherokee Indians, you get born into it. If some black from Africa moves to Britain, he's not English. He may have citizenship. He's African, right? Because you're born into your nation. So that's nation. The Japanese people are a nation. A country is a geographic unit. And when you combine the two, where the nation has a country like Japan has, where pretty much everyone, or vast majority, are Japanese, that's called nationalism. And nationalism, I think, works the best because people have shared values. And diversity, and there's been studies, does not enrich us, it creates friction. You have a country, like, that's why people want to go to areas that aren't diverse, because people are friendlier, they have the same values, I can understand them, they have the same accent, they have basically the same view of life. That's what most people want. And again, if you don't want that, if you want to be enriched, I'm not trying to stop you, just don't force it on other people.
This is a fundamental concept that is truly obvious. I mean, if you took the people of Italy and you teleported the people of Italy to say some part of the United States, it would still be Italy. But if you teleported a bunch of people from some other part of the world to Italy, where they're telling people no longer because they've been teleported to America, then the region, the geographic region, would no longer be Italy.
Yeah, I've used this argument a lot. I wonder if he got it from me. It's kind of interesting. Except, though the reason he's using Italy here, by the way, is to get away from the racial aspect of it, because Italians are white. And this is actually kind of not as good as an example as me. I use the example of Haiti and Japanese. If you moved all the Haitians to Japan, Japan immediately would be a disaster case and poor, and you'd have cannibalism. And if you put all the Japanese in Haiti, it'd be skyscrapers going up within a year. It's because of the people, because there's a racial element to it. Now, Italians are white, so there is some truth to what he's saying. Although in small enough groups of people that are closely related to you genetically, there can be assimilation that works. It's interesting, he says, Italy, because a little of this actually happened near where I live, not real close to where I live, but here in Northwest Arkansas, just north, I think it is, Fayetteville, there's a little town called Tontitown, Arkansas. And if you read the history, it's really fascinating, because every year they have a grape festival because they grow grapes there and they have a vineyard. It's not like the greatest climate for a vineyard, but they put one in. Then they have this big spaghetti dinner. And you're like, well, what is this? Well, it's Italian. The Tontitown was founded by Italian immigrants. They were leaving Italy. And initially they were in the southern Arkansas, but that failed. It's too damn hot. So they moved up to Northwest Arkansas, and they had their own community. It was, they had a Catholic church, because there was no Catholics really in Arkansas back then in the early 20th century. Catholics weren't really liked, but they were Catholic. They spoke Italian, and they had their own community, and they were basically Italian. But guess what? You go to Tontitown now, it's just like any other suburb. You wouldn't even know, except for their festival, that there was an Italian heritage. So the Italians totally assimilated within normal Americans, for good or bad, they did. But the problem is not all groups can do that because the genetic divide is too wide. We see that with slavery. Blacks have been in this country forever, almost, but they still haven't been able to assimilate with the white population because there's some genetic barriers. Well, other groups that are closer, you can assimilate, even though there could be some issues, like the Irish or the Germans. There could be some issues there, and there were, but they could assimilate. But anyway, Elon Musk is using an example. He's just replacing Italy when I use Japan and Haiti. Now, I use Japan and Haiti too, just so I get over the whole white thing. I'm just using two non-white groups to show how even non-white, it's just not, it's not as simple as you have whites and then everyone else. No, there's a lot of different races and cultures, and but the analogy still holds true.
It would be that other country. A country is its people, not its geography.
Yeah, he's pretty much right, but I would just say that we are, I would say that a nation is its people and a country is a geographic designation. But that is good. I'm glad that Elon Musk did this. JD Vance mirroring Rams too. One of the things I've been happy about, and I'm not like an ego, I'm not saying I'm the reason, but I think maybe a little influence I've had on people. And it's kind of hard being the vanguard because you get all the censorship, you get the deplatforming, you get the algorithm, you get all that, right? And all these people, I won't have anything to do with that guy. I don't want to be associated with that guy. But then they like secretly listen or whatever. Then you start to influence people. And then the idea is they start to kind of dip their toe into these ideas. And then they start to see the cultural change where these ideas become more acceptable. And then they jump into it, and then they make millions of dollars off of it. I guess I should be envious, but life is short anyway. So I'm happy. I want to, money comes and goes, right? I mean, once I'm dead, money's gone. What good is money once you're dead? I want there to be a legacy, though. So if I could have had a small part in helping influence other people by planting seeds, that really makes me extremely happy. And I think I have. Now, I'm not the only one. A lot of people have done this. And of course, my ideas didn't come out of a void. I was influenced by people like Pat Buchanan, Joe Sobran, a lot of people I read that really influenced me. So Joe Sobran never knew about me, I don't think, but he totally influenced me. And then I influenced other people. So let's take a look. Look at J.D. Vance. And yeah, J.D. Vance, he's really done the evolution. So ideas are powerful, by the way. And this is why, like the SPLC and ADL, they always want to censor, because they understand ideas are powerful and they can't compete with these ideas. They don't really have an answer to it, arguing, so they just try to use violence and physically shut down people. All right, let's listen to J.D. Vance here.
I actually think it's a pro-Europe speech. We love Europe. We love European people. Of course, it's so important culturally in the world. And also, America came from Europe fundamentally. Yeah. But we have to appreciate that the greatest threat to Europe is not, China or Russia. The greatest threat to Europe is from within. It's migration policies that destroy the fundamental cultural bedrock of Europe.
Yeah, and this is really important to understand because Russia has no desire to invade like France or Germany. It's ridiculous. But even if Russia did, I don't think Russia would attempt to replace the people. And you say what you want about Nazi Germany, they invaded France after France declared war on them, not the other way around. But they invaded France and they took over France. And did they try to replace the French people? Did they try to make everyone in France learn German? No, they didn't. They were happy with they had Vichy France. And let's say a hypothetical scenario. It's always interesting to do a thought experiment. Let's say if Hitler won World War II, what would things look like? And what does it mean by winning? I don't believe Hitler wanted to take over the entire world or any of that comic book fantasy. But what it would have meant, you would have had German troops would have left France, and you'd have a government that's more nationalistic, and it may have a lot of the National Socialist principles, but it would be based on the French people. And they would still speak the French language. They would still be their religion and all that. Hitler did not want to try to change that at all. In fact, nationalism, that's international or globalism that wants to try to change people. Hitler did not want to try to make France into Germany or England into Germany, right? I don't believe that at all from reading about that. So even if Russia should take over these countries, which they won't, I don't believe they try to eliminate the French people. But the French government, English government, they are straight out trying to eliminate their own people and replace them with third worlders. So they want to eliminate white French people. They want to eliminate white British. And no other government is trying to do that except their own government, because they've been brainwashed into the globalism. They've been brainwashed by certain groups that white people are illegal, are problems and immoral, and we have to eliminate whiteness. How do you eliminate whiteness? You eliminate white people. That's how they think.
It's economic policies that make them less competitive. It's national security policies. These guys, on the one hand, their leadership I'm talking about, say that Russia is the biggest threat in the entire world. Meanwhile, they buy billions and billions of dollars of Russian gas, and they spend 1% of their GDP on defense, while we're spending 3 or 4% of our GDP. The rhetoric in Europe just doesn't match the reality.
And then they act like Russia.
That's exactly
throwing away people they don't like.
And they start trying to throw presidential candidates and political leaders off the ballot. Look, that is not good. It's not good for Europe. It's not good for the United States of America. We want our friends to share our values. And the Europeans, they are absolutely 100% our friends. But that relationship, we're just saying it's going to get stressed and it's going to get tested if they keep on trying to throw opposition leaders in jail and they stop respecting their own borders. Because here's the thing. If Europe disrespects its own borders, if you have, a Syrian national with terrorist ties who gets into Germany, we know that doesn't stop in Germany. Eventually, people start to make their way all across the world. National borders are in the interest of everybody, certainly of Europe and the United States.
Yeah, 100%. So it's good to see JD Vance. It's good to see his evolution. And I 100% support JD Vance on that. Borders are important. And that's the number one thing. And again, they're kind of tied, all this. You got to have borders and you got to have tariffs to protect your economy, because you don't want, just like you don't want all the people in the world flooding into your country, you don't want all your production flowing out. James, thank you, $5. Yeah, until we solve the certain question, politics will continue to decay, left or right wing, in the United States. So let me see, get that power chat here. And let's see here. And thank you, James, for that. But to your basic point here, are controlled by, I think that's a little bit, I understand what you're saying, but I think that's an oversimplification of things. And when you do that, you're going to run into issues like, oh, if we just solve this problem, then everything magically falls into place. No, it won't. And there's, for example, a lot of these people that are trying to have mass immigration, a lot of these are white people, with Catholic Charities and other groups. And a lot of these shit libs are white. And I understand to a degree, because a lot of these people are weak-willed and they believe what they're told to believe based on what they see on TV. And let me see if I have this. You brought up a good point, and this is something that has to be dealt with. Let's see here. What it was is this woman, and I don't have it up right now, but she made a point about how, why would we want to go back to the 50s? It was just a horrible thing. And here it is right here. This is the problem we have in general with control of the media, that we need to break the control. And I think technology with AI may start to break this, where we get more viewpoints out there. But here's this lady, and she is saying, I don't get this trad wife trend. And I'm not defending the whole trad wife thing. A lot of it, I think, is derivative, and there is a grift. So I'm not going to get into that. I'm not a big fan of that either. I'm a trad wife. Let me pose naked on the internet. Yeah, okay. Why do men want to revert to the 1950s, when women were drugged out on Valium, psychiatric drugs, and diet pills, while a man ran off and cheated and then came home and abused their wife? The problem with her is she's believing her view of the 1950s, what some writer in Hollywood, like with Mad Men, told her it was. And it wasn't this at all. I would say women by far more are on a prescription medication for psychiatric problems by far than they were in the 1950s. And the problem happened here is a certain group hates us, and they didn't like the nostalgia for the 1950s, because we do have the data. Divorce was rare. Most people had a mom and a dad when they grew up. It was a 90% white country. You went to a school, it was mostly other white people. It was Christian. Crime was low. It was a very prosperous time in the country. If you wanted a good job, just head down the street. Even if you dropped off high school, head down the street to the factory. You're going to get a good job. It may be hard work, but you're going to get a good job. It was a good time. It really was a good time. And they don't want us to think of that era nostalgically. They want to try to do revisionism. That was a horrible time. Now, did some women get abused in the 1950s? Of course. I mean, it's not a perfect society. Bad things happened in the 50s. But I would say America, spiritually and based on the family and economically, was healthier in the 1950s by far than it has been since. We're in a really bad place now. In the 50s, you could go out, you could easily get a job, and you could buy a home, you could get a car, you could start a family. Average young person could do this. This was the world. The government didn't hate you because of your race. The crime was low. People had the similar traditions. Does this mean that it was 100% perfect and everyone was nice and there was no bad people? No, of course not. But because of writers in Hollywood and in movies, they wanted to portray it in a negative way that a lot of people, it brainwashes them because they didn't live through. My mother lived through the 50s. She was a teenager. She said it was a great time. People that lived through it said it was a great time. So those people are dying off. So they're trying to do revisionism history, saying it was a horrible time. And that's just a lie. But a person like her, she doesn't know any better. She believes what her TV tells her. And this is part of the problem we have. Getting back to your question, James, is when a small group can control a lot of the propaganda, a lot of people are very, I'm not saying they're stupid, but they're not curious or conformist, and women very much so are. They will follow the herd. We saw this during COVID. We saw this even with Ukrainian war. Remember, everyone believed that Ukraine was winning and Russia was out of missiles and all that bullshit. Why? Because they just followed the herd. They believed the propaganda. But I think potentially with AI and people create their own television programs without having to have actors or studio, AI is getting pretty damn good. That's going to change. Let's see here. Yeah, I did my video about this. Thank you, Rowhouse. This is about the failure to understand what self-defense is. If Kyle Rittenhouse was justified in using lethal self-defense, yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse, the jury ruled that it was self-defense because the Antifa guy, by the way, Kyle Rittenhouse just shot white guys. The guy was coming at him with a knife and a gun. And so when someone's coming at you with a gun, that is self-defense. And Daniel Penny was justified in using self-defense. Yeah, there's a black guy in the subway that was trying to kill people. Daniel Penny pulled them off, so he was saving other people. Then Carmelo Anthony was justified in self-defense. No, because Carmelo Anthony was that black teenager, had a history of trouble. He was at a track meet with two white teenagers. He shouldn't have been there. He had his backpack in a space that didn't belong there. The white teenagers say, "Hey, will you move your backpack? It doesn't belong here." You know, he did the usual stuff, probably. I can imagine what he said. So the white teenager pushed the backpack out of the way. And then Carmelo thought it was justified to kill the guy because of that. That's not self-defense. So someone pushes your backpack, that is not self-defense. That's different than in Kyle Rittenhouse's case. Someone was coming at him with a gun. That's self-defense. If Daniel Penny's case, he was protecting other people because the black guy was trying to kill him on the subway. That's self-defense. Moving your backpack is not self-defense. And if Tariq Nasheed is not able to understand that, I don't want to live around people like Tariq Nasheed because he lacks the intelligence to live in a civilized society. And he's just saying this because he's tribal to his people, and that's fine, but I don't want him living around me at all. I don't want to live around me. I don't want people like think that around me. They can live with each other, and if they should all have a high crime rate, I don't really care. I don't care anymore about that. That's their problem. But yeah, that is an issue. I did my video about that today, and if you want to see my video, be sure to go to my Substack. Let me just go ahead and give you guys, in case you don't have that, sign up. And the thing with Substack is I have my roundtable every Tuesday. That's a great thing. And every Friday, I have a member only video. But the cool thing is all the other days, like Monday through, did I get this in? Yeah, Monday through Thursday is all free content. So there's no reason, not to sign up, at least for the free content. So thank you for that. And wow, the hour went quick. So today's Monday. Tomorrow is Tuesday. Tomorrow I'll be back at the same time, the Ramsey Paul Show. And we'll see how kind of a review of where the market is. The market now is down about 2%. That's nothing to really, it's low, but it's not like a crash right now. We'll see. We'll see if it does crash. But then also, we're going to have our roundtable tomorrow. I might make the talk about tariffs and the economy for our roundtable. Sometimes we have a focused subject we have. And last week we went like for 3 hours. It was a great show. So again, I really appreciate you. It's a way to help support me. And I do appreciate that. But guys, thank you so much for being here and have a great day. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.